All right, guys, so right now I'm getting ready to show you how to complete the square. This is something you should have learned in Math 2, but we are going to go over it because you are going to need this concept to write equations of circles. So complete the square. All right, so just as a quick reminder, this is going to be complete the square only when a equals 1. We're not going to deal with anything more complicated than that. All right, so just to show you guys, and write this down just as a reminder, there are two ways you already know how to solve a quadratic. One way is the AC method. So if I have x squared minus 4x plus 3, hopefully you remember you multiply a times c and get 3. What factors of 3 give you a negative 4? And in this case, it's going to be a negative 1 and a negative 3. When I multiply those, I get a positive 3, but when I add them up, I get a negative 3. You can use your shortcut right now, but I'll just go ahead and work it all out. So I'm going to replace that with minus 1x minus 3x plus 3. Remember to factor by grouping. I'm going to take an x out, and I'm left with x minus 1. That has to be the same exact thing. 3 divided by negative 1 is negative 3. Then you get x minus 3, x minus 1. So hopefully you all know, since a was 1, you could have skipped these two steps and gone straight to here. X minus 1, x minus 3. So now you set them each equal to 0, and you end up with 3 and positive 1. So that's the AC method. We should already be able to do that, no problem. The other way we learn to solve a quadratic is the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula. All right, so the quadratic formula is opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. All right, so if I use the same problem and I do the quadratic formula, on this particular one, a is 1, b is negative 4, c is 3. So you get x equals the opposite of negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 quantity squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 3, all that divided by 2 times a, which is 1. And then that simplifies to positive 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 12, which is 4, divided by 2. Well, what is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is actually 2. So look what we got. We have 4 plus 2, which is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then we have 4 minus 2, which is 2. 2 divided by 2, which is 1. All right, well, if you want to see that, I'll show you really quick. You had 4 plus 2 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then you have 4 minus 2, which is 2. 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So you have those same answers. You have 3 and you have 1. Same answers we got up there. If you can use the AC method, it's the most preferred way, rather than dealing with the radicals down here. But if the AC method won't work, you have to use the quadratic formula. Well, then there is complete the square. Complete the square. All right, and so this is what you need to remember. So here's how it works. You take your x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. You separate your x's from your constant. So you're going to take your constant to the other side. X squared minus 4x equals negative 3. All right, so now you are going to add, you're going to take your b, you're going to add b divided by 2 quantity squared to each side. So I am going to add half of b, b is 4, so I am going to add half of 4, which is 2. So I'm going to add 2 squared to each side. So what I do to one, I have to do to the other to keep the equation balanced. So I add half of b, b is 4. Don't worry about the sign, because when you square it, it's going to be positive. So even if you said negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, negative 2 quantity squared would be 4. So the sign doesn't really matter right there. All right, so now watch. Here's what we will do. Now you end up with x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals negative 3 plus 4, which is 1. All right. Now what? Now this is a, this becomes, you factor the left side, and so this becomes a binomial square. So what factors of 4 give you a negative 4? And it's going to be x minus 2 and x minus 2 equals 1. All right, this is where we're going to stop. So we're not going to take it any further than this. We're going to take it to x minus 2 quantity squared equals 1. That's as far as we need to take what we're doing right now. But let me just show you. How it would work. So if I continue this out, you don't need to write this down. I'm just going to show you. So we're going to stop here. This is as far as we need to take it. We're going to stop right here. That's as far as we need to take it to complete this, to write the equation of the circle. But just so you can see, well, let me do it like this. I'm going to finish it out just so you can see how it would work. So to solve this, guys, hopefully you remember that you would take the square root of each side, but on this one you'd have to have plus or minus the square root of 1. So when you square root, it goes away, so you get x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 1 is 1. So you get x equals plus or minus 1 plus 2. So when you solve it, you get a positive 1 plus 2, which is 3, and a negative 1 plus 2, which is 1. So we get those same exact answers. So just so you can see, well, you can go ahead and, we'll go ahead and write that on there. It's enough room, but here we're going to stop on both sides. So let's go ahead and write that down just so you can see. So again, you will take the square root and you'll have your plus or minus the square root of 1. So you're going to get x minus 2. You don't need the parentheses. So when you square root, it goes away. So you have x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 1 is 1. So you are going to get plus or minus 1 plus 2. So you get 1 plus 2, which is 3, and then negative 1 plus 2, which is 1. So again, you get the same exact answers. But here, we're just going to stop right here. So that's as far as we're going to take it. But I wanted you to see if you complete the whole square, it does work. Obviously, if you can do the AC method, it's better to do the AC method. But we're going to need this concept when we go to write equations of circles. So you're going to have to understand the idea of adding half a b squared to each side. And as soon as you get it to here, that's all we needed to do with it. All right. So the next part, let's do a couple of examples, and then you can finish the practice. So here's example number 1. So if you have x squared minus 6x plus 7. Again, you're going to separate out your x's. X squared minus 6x. Put your 7 on the other side. So when you take it over, it'll be a negative 7. Now, what you are going to do is you are going to add half of b squared. So I'll write it like this. You're adding half of b squared to each side. Half of b squared. You add half of b squared. So I'll write that again. Add b divided by 2 squared to each side. And that's what we did. All right. So here's what you have. You have x squared minus 6x, and watch, I just want you to write it like this, plus 3 squared. And then you have negative 7 plus 3 squared. The reason I just want you to write it like this is because that's going to give you what you need. Rather than actually figuring out what factors of 9 give you a negative 6, rather than actually figuring out what factors of 4 give you a negative 4, what's in the parentheses is all you need. I just need that 2. So I take that sign right here and I use that 2 and I have exactly what I need. So this is going to be x. You're going to use whatever sign's in front of b, and then you're going to use what is ever inside the parenthesis. Quantity squared, and that equals negative 7 plus 9, which is 2. And then you can stop. That's as far as we need to do. So we're going to use this sign and we're going to use this number. And that's it. That's all you got to do. So let's try another one. If you have x squared plus 12x minus 2 equals 0, again, separate your x's. Put your constant on the other side. So I'm going to add to the other side, so it's going to be 2. Now I need to add half of b. What is 12? 6. So I'm going to add 6 squared to each side. 6 squared to each side. Now I'm going to factor that. I'm actually factoring x squared plus 12x plus 36. What factors of 36 give you a 12? It's just 6 and 6. So I don't need to work that. So it's x, use this sign, plus use inside your parentheses 6 squared, and then 2 plus 36 is 38. And then you are done. So again, you're using the sign in front of the b, and you're using what is ever inside that parenthesis. Your half of b squared. So it's as simple as that. Let's do another one. X squared minus 5x minus 9 equals 0. Separate your x's. Put your constant on the other side. Now watch this one. We are going to add half of 5. I don't want to write 2.5. You don't want decimals. So we'll just write half of 5. It doesn't reduce. So half of 5 quantity squared to each side. 5 halves quantity squared to each side. So what is that going to factor into? You wouldn't even be able to factor that. You probably wouldn't even know what that is. That's why you should leave it like that. So it's going to be x and then that sign minus and then 5 halves squared. So again, use the sign in front of b, use whatever's in the parentheses, and then just put that in your calculator. 9 plus 5 halves squared just gives you 61 over 4. And I'll show you. 9 plus 5 halves, quantity squared, 61 over 4. So you can just put it in your calculator. And there you go. You're done. One more example. X squared plus 3x minus 11 equals 0. Separate your x's from your constant. So instead of subtracting 11, I'm going to add it to the other side. Add half of b squared to each side. So I'm going to add half of b. B is 3, so I'm going to add half of b squared to each side. And then I get x plus 3 halves quantity squared equals 11 plus 3 halves squared ends up being 53 over 4. Just put it in your calculator. 53 over 4. Again, you're using this sign and you're using what's inside the parenthesis. So you put your x's on one side, put your constant on the other. Whatever b is, you're adding half of b squared to each side. And then to factor this, because you wouldn't be able to factor that, you wouldn't know what that was, 1.5 quantity squared. If you had 1.5 squared, that would be 2.25. Would you know what factors of 2.25 would give you a 3? No. So just leave it in this form. Leave it in this form. So just make sure it's a reduced fraction. And so you use that sign, use that inside that parenthesis, and then use your calculator to figure that out. And that ends up giving you 53/4. And that's it. So you're going to do the following problems.